Are you 50 or older? This news is for you. The CDC now recommends you get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at risk. People 50 or older are over 6 times more likely to be hospitalized with pneumococcal pneumonia compared to adults 18 to 49. Just one shot can help protect you. Learn more and schedule at vaxassist.com. That's VAXassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
I didn't even know if we were going to actually get to the show tonight, and I'll tell you why.
Why?
Well, you amaze me every single time.
Why?
Because every time I think, like, there's no way you can impress me even more.
Right.
We show up to the studio and we start doing research about one thing and one thing only,
okay.
Our show, and then you all of a sudden decide to derail the train and go for a little ride, bring us through La La Land, and find these little nuggets of facts that are just insane. Hey, how you doing? It's Sean. It's Friday night. It is the Sackheads Radio Show. I'll tell you, man, every single time you blow my mind. It's an honor to sit across from you, as screwed up as you are sometimes. And I mean that with nothing but love.
Now, wait a second. What are we talking about? Are we talking about our new network idea, or are we talking about the other thing?
Let's start with the new network.
Okay. So we, as everybody knows, that we have ideological warfare going on with Michael Moore.
Yes.
Pierce Morgan.
Yes.
And
Chris Matthews. Who else?
I was waiting for you because I know you like saying that name. Or Chet, as I like to call him. in the poo state.
Sadly, only those of us, I think, over 30 will get that joke.
Right. So I think that those three should get together because their shows are all so successful.
Right.
I think that those three should should get together and form their own station.
Right.
And call it the Insignificant Trio Station, or TITS
Network.
for short.
Network.
Their
own network, yeah.
Oh, okay, but call it station.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you're going to throw the
Insignificant
You can throw
Trio
the Insignificant Station. Network Trio Station and call it TINTS.
TINTS.
Can you imagine just the awesomeness that network would be? You throw in Al Gore, who, by the way, I figured out his speech pattern. I've been trying to figure out, like, what makes up Al Gore's speech pattern. It's 1 part Sling Blade.
Okay.
1 part Jimmy Carter. Am I wrong?
Can you play those two side by side? Do we have a clip?
I don't have that clip available, but you have Sling Blade, I like the way you talk too, that guy.
Right.
And then you have Jimmy Carter, who is just, and never really, and weird. And so you have those two. I can't do the Southern accent very well. But I was listening to a speech from Al Gore. He was talking about how he sold current TV or whatever it is to Al Jazeera.
He sold his current TV?
Yeah. His Magnavox.
Like the one he was watching?
No, the network that he had
the
there.
box remote. Remember that was like the size of an 8-track tape and had 4 buttons on it that you push?
And for whatever reason, that just stuck in my head. I was like, it's like Sling Blade and Jimmy Carter all at once. Very interesting.
Interesting.
Am I... I'll tell you one more musing that I had this week while I was driving around. It's something that stuck with my head.
Okay.
So I was behind a car. It was a Prius. I'm not going to hold it against the person.
Yes, you will.
Even though there's been numerous studies that those quote-unquote green vehicles, the amount of electricity and toxic chemicals it takes to actually create them causes more of an impact on the environment than a car running on gasoline for 20 years. But listen, I don't want to go off on a tangent here.
We need you know what we should do? We should subsidize those types of vehicles with tax dollars.
You're right. That would be a plan that couldn't fail.
Right. No, that's what I'm thinking. And then we wouldn't have to close air control towers.
Well, there you go. Now we're saving lives all over the place. We are just, I don't know why we aren't the ones in charge of everything.
Finish your story.
Well, I wanted to go off on this little thing because you're right. We should be in charge. I agree with you. Wait, who said that? Was that me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the bumper sticker on this car said, "War is not the answer." And at face value, I was like, okay, they don't believe in any sort of war.
Okay.
And then I thought about it, and I said, that's kind of open-ended because it depends on the question.
Right, like if it was when you were a child, what was your favorite card game?
Right.
War, in that case, would be the answer for me.
Absolutely, that would be the answer. If you played a game of cards,
okay,
in which you laid out 3 cards and then you flipped over.
I just said that. I just used the card in the war game. You can't do that.
Okay. Let's say...
Okay, what type of board game is Risk?
A war game.
Right. So fill in the blank. The blank of 1812.
War.
Okay.
Now, if you're asking the question, hey, I got the wrong croissant, how should I respond? A, B, or C? C being war, B being file a complaint, A being throwing the croissant in the person's face.
War.
It could very well be C.
It could be.
Probably not.
Okay, hang on a second.
If you
hang on a second because that makes no sense to me. So I'm going to interrupt you here. And I'm going to pose this question to you.
Me only?
You only. You were at Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes.
And you order your coffee.
Yes.
And the person behind the counter gives you a coffee, but instead of giving you Dunkin' coffee, they brewed Folgers in the back.
That would be war.
Okay.
And that would also be treason, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because they're going against the Dunkin' Donuts, the world of Dunkin' Donuts, and that's treasonous. That might have to become a Sackhead's law. We'll run that through. We have to run that through the War Committee and see if that qualifies, and the Judicial Committee. But it's one of those things that might be war.
Joe Montana here. In my football days, I knew the importance of a strong defense. Now I'm sharing how you can help defend your health against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease. Are you 50 or older like me? The CDC now recommends vaccination against pneumococcal disease. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at increased risk and over 6 times greater risk of hospitalization with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50. Schedule your appointment today at vaxassist.com.
Sponsored by Pfizer.
All right.
For you.
But I just thought, what a stupid ass bumper sticker.
No, war may not be the answer, but it may be the solution.
It depends on the question.
Correct.
And the solution. Right.
For example, Pierce. We fought something and kicked your rears at Yorktown. Remember Yorktown?
Right.
But it was the revolutionary something.
Action, movement, protest. Hold on, I'm getting to it. Sit-in, occupy, war.
War.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So
war was the answer in that case. I don't understand.
I can't wait to hear all the warmongering talk, hate email that we're going to get. That, you guys are advocating for war. No, I was discussing a bumper sticker. And it's just one of the...
In certain cases, war may be necessary. For example, we'll talk about him later. We'll talk about Gangnam Style later. If he launches a missile and tries to turn us into a sea or fire, war may be
the appropriate response.
Maybe.
Another interesting bumper sticker I saw this week. It was a good week for bumper stickers.
Okay.
Everyone has the bumper stickers if they've ran a marathon, and it says 26.
That annoys me.
Right. I saw the best one, and it said 0.0, and underneath it said, but have fun with your marathon. And I said, that is a bumper sticker for me.
Nice.
Way to call it out. I would also have a picture of a guy drinking a beer and eating a cheeseburger, but that would probably just be more specific to me.
Are you kidding me? You would have a KCCO sticker, which I totally am on board with.
Hey, I do what I can to KCCO. You know that.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Now, I found something interesting.
You always do.
I found something interesting. I didn't know this, and don't ask me how I came across this because I probably couldn't find it again. If I wanted to.
Okay.
But I am so upset that I did not know this or realize exactly what it was prior to tonight.
Yes.
But did you know that in the United States Code, and I'm really upset I didn't find this when we talked about the current definition of militia under the United States Code, that there's a section 32 USC 109, which talks about the maintenance of other troops. Which is weird, right? Because you have the standing army, which our founding fathers loved the idea of. And anyways, I digress.
What?
We had the standing army. We have the National Guard, right? The Air Guard, the National Guard, and the reserve units. But did you know there are other troops?
No, I was not aware of that.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I didn't know what these other troops were. But apparently, under subsection C, so it's 32 U.S.C. 109 subsection C, in addition to its National Guard, if any, a state, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the District of Columbia, Guam, or the Virgin Islands may, as provided by its laws, organize and maintain defense forces. A defense force established under this section may be used within the jurisdiction concerned as its chief executive or commanding general in the case of the District of Columbia considers necessary, but it may not be called, ordered, or drafted into the armed forces.
Interesting.
Now, I did not know that because the Constitution specifically says that any state may not maintain troops in time of peace without the consent of Congress. So apparently Congress has consented, and this came as a result of World War I. National Guard troops got pulled away and so forth, and states were like, well, okay, now what are we supposed to do?
Right, what if something goes awry seriously?
So, yeah, or a sourdough, or a wheat.
Or a pumpernickel.
Pumpernickel.
God help us all.
Would be silly. So apparently Congress said, okay, hey, since we're calling your troops up and paying for them and equipping them, I mean, since the federal government is doing all this and they can call up the troops at will even for training and everything else, aren't they really federal troops? I digress. Anyways, that's an argument for another show. But they authorized states to have these defense forces.
What if they enacted their troops, called them up, and then used them, say, I don't know, like for martial law or some other illegal activity?
They have Homeland Security for that now, and they have tons of ammo, so don't worry about it. 21 states actually have this. Did you know this?
No.
I didn't either.
Are you making this up again?
I'm not making this up.
Okay.
No, I just quoted the section.
What states maintain these?
Okay, so Alabama.
Shout out if your state's in this.
I can see it. Alabama, Alaska. This one surprised me. California.
Does not exist.
California does exist.
No, it does not.
Okay, People's Republic of.
Okay, that one I
California,
recognize.
They have a state defense force.
Really?
They do. Connecticut, Georgia, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts.
No.
I know. Michigan, Mississippi, New Mexico, New York, Ohio, Oregon, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. Hawaii does not have one, but I'm not surprised.
Right.
I mean, really? I mean, what are you going to defend against? They have all kinds of military there, and
it's
pretty laid back.
Yeah.
I miss it. Anyway.
What are you going to defend against? Surfers? Like people enjoying themselves?
Right.
The icy?
What do you think?
I think that's outstanding.
Now, is this considered militia?
No.
It's not.
It's not. It does not fall under militia, in my opinion.
But why?
Because it's the state-specific defense in lieu of the military.
Militia is not military. We already talked about this.
I understand
the organized
that,
and the unorganized.
The militia is also specifically stated in the Constitution. This was added during World War I.
So this is other troops.
This is other troops. It's very interesting. Now, I wonder, we always talk about starting our own Navy.
Right.
Can the state of California, under this provision, maintain its own Navy?
I don't know, because all they have...
Or any other of the states, Alaska, I could see having its own Navy. It's right across from Russia.
I don't think so, because there is no National Guard. There's no Naval National Guard.
Right.
Correct.
All the more reason not to have one.
These reserve troops support the National Guard.
All the more reason not to have one. Wait, all the more reason
What?
to have one. Sorry, I misspoke. Because there is no Naval National Guard. There's
Right.
a Naval Reserve. So that means once the Navy's taken away, we are defenseless via the ocean.
That's not true. We have your rowboat and my 45.
And a letter of marque.
And well, it's a letter and it has a mark on
what
it.
If the state? What if the state said, "Hey, we need to secure our waterways, say against terrorist
submarines
attacks,
in the Gulf of Mexico,
something
okay.
like that."
That's silly. That would never.
What
happen.
if we bought a few old PT boats or designed a few boats that were like PT boats that had torpedoes under this provision and utilized it as the State Defense Force or the last-ditch effort, if you will?
I think waterways are different. Waterways are treated differently.
What if they're state waterways?
Like a river?
Like, say, California, I'll use an example.
It's still waterways. Waterways are different, and waterways fall under a whole different. That's why Coast Guard goes into like the Sacramento River.
But you also have state laws that are pushed in those waterways. So it's either one or the other. And if it's both, then I would say both apply. If you could enforce a state statute, like I know in Boston Harbor, because I've been on it numerous times, the Boston police can enforce statutes. State police can enforce statutes. There's 25 other law enforcement agencies that are out there. They can enforce state law within certain waterways. So why would this not apply?
Because this is for a defense force specifically. It's not a waterway patrol. We were talking about international waters. You have Coast Guard, you have Naval Reserve for that. This is for dealing with emergencies at home, those types of
I'm just saying,
of state emergencies.
Can there not be crowds on a river? I say we get it. I say we move on this.
You say we just try and get.
We can start the Californian Navy.
Well, here's what's awesome.
Get a letter of marque.
Puerto Rico has a defense force.
Yes, they do.
Why?
Because they're a Commonwealth. They actually, I believe, they also have a National Guard attachment because they are part of the country.
Their territory.
Yeah. But I know they do have a defense force. Most people don't know. I grew up.
You didn't know about a defense force 3 minutes ago.
No, I knew Puerto Rico did, and I knew that for very specific. I had a lot of Puerto Rican friends growing up, and their fathers had served in it. They also have their own state police, believe it or not.
I believe that. What I find funny, it is. Is
it ha-ha funny or just?
No, it's ha-ha funny. Is that in the subsection C, it says a defense force established under this section may be used within the jurisdiction concerned as its chief executive or commanding general in the case of the District of Columbia. Now, District of Columbia, I don't believe has a defense force, but how awesome is this? I'm the general.
I'm the commanding general.
I'm the general of District of Columbia.
Maybe that general could.
How awesome is that?
Let's find that guy.
You're the general.
And see what he can enforce, and maybe we can clean out Congress.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That'd be an insurrection.
Ooh. Good point. I'm not okay with that.
No.
All right. Well, there goes that plan. But I'm telling you.
Anyways, look, I wanted to share.
How did you find this? Because I bet you there are certain people who listen to our show,
right, that
may want to take part in something like that. Because that sounds like a group full of people.
It's volunteer.
That's totally volunteer.
It's all volunteer basis. If you go to your state's website, if it's one of those 21 states I listed off, or Puerto Rico, go to your state. Well, in California, because I clicked on California just to see, you can go to the California state government website, and it actually talks about how to join and apply and whatever else. Same with Massachusetts. I don't know about the other ones. I haven't had a chance to click on them all and kind of play around with it. I was just really curious. And I came across this. You're really going to make me tell the story?
Yeah.
It's... Okay. I came across this researching a Supreme Court opinion where a governor tried to prohibit troops from taking part in a federal exercise because he said, the troops fall under my control as a National Guard unit. I don't want to let them go for training. They're called up by Congress in service in time of emergency, war, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, in this Supreme Court decision, this other troops was listed in there as one of the reasons for the ruling, because they said, well, a governor cannot prohibit the state, the units from going out and training out of country, and it doesn't leave them defenseless because under the U.S. Code they have the ability to form other troops, and it cited the U.S. Code section in the ruling, and so I looked that up, and that's how I found the other.
When was that ruling from? Do you know?
Really?
Yeah.
No, not offhand.
Oh.
Because I have to look at the ruling.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I was just curious to see how current it was.
It was a 1990 ruling.
That's fairly current for the Supreme Court. That's probably like 4 decisions ago. You know, snappy they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they, that is, we have to look into that more. Maybe we can get one of the generals on to discuss it. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can get an interview just so people can find out more. I think that's a public service people do need to be a part of.
Yeah, volunteer their time.
True volunteer service to your state, and your state being part of the country, but maintaining your state rights.
Another interesting part of this ruling was it found that, you know how there's some groups that consider themselves militia groups, but they're not attached to any state or anything else, that under laws, because they are considering themselves a militia group and they're not regulated or trained or subject to call up to service even by the states, that they could be considered in a state of rebellion. Thought that was kind of an interesting statement, because they're not subject to call up. Right.
They're not organized by the state. They're their own entity, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
That depending what they're doing. I thought it was interesting.
It's amazing when you look for one thing, especially you are the king of this, finding other things just down the line that are relevant. Like, that's a very relevant argument, because if we keep going with that, people could cite that further down the line when the militia groups, because as we've said, the state militia, when they talk about that with the Guard and maintaining weapons and all that stuff that we talked about on numerous shows, that ruling, that opinion alone could be drawn back out and said, well, in 1990, the Supreme Court gave the opinion that militias are not part, so that kind of knocks down your militia idea when it comes to gun control.
Yeah,
it could be brought. I'm not saying it could be brought up as a reason.
Well, but the militia are people as a whole. So I think what it's referring to is a group of people who get together and have some form of rank structure or whatever outside of just the citizenry or outside of the National Guard is what they're talking about. If anybody's interested in reading the case law, it's kind of interesting kind of how it got there. But it was Perpich v. Department of Defense. And the case is 496 U.S. 334. It's a 1990 case, and it was the governor of Minnesota, basically, versus DOD, about the ability of the federal government to call up troops to train overseas and basically leave the states undefended or the Guard units unavailable for service. And it's a really interesting decision. Justice Stevens wrote the majority decision, and it actually talks about how the National Guard has kind of evolved through the years, and it takes all the way up through the various acts from 1792 all the way up through the Dick Act, which talks about the militia, kind of how we discussed it before about the age groups and so forth, and kind of how the National Guard has evolved into this almost overlapping entity with the United States Army, because they are funded and subject to control at the federal level and be subject to call into federal service at any time, yet they also have the allegiance to the state. And as a result of all this, when this happened in World War I, Congress created this other code section for these defense forces. It's just kind of an interesting history. If anybody's interested in reading it, I wanted to throw that case out there. Don't ask me why I was reading that, because it doesn't really matter. Just know that I'm kind of a nerd.
I wonder how that would play out. Say, we always talk about our protection against tyranny. Let's say down the line we do have that tyrannous government that oppresses us.
Not right now.
Not right now. I don't mean right now.
Yeah, not right now. This administration is not a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
It's not. You're right. And so down the line, let's say
It's overreaching and
it's overreaching. It's impeding on our rights and blocking our liberties and taking our liberties and
our money
and our way of life. Anyhow, so say that happens,
changing
and the people start to rebel and say, hey, you know what? This is not okay. We're going to stand by the Constitution as it was written and intended.
Okay.
The government says, nope, we're declaring martial law, which is not legal, as we've discussed on the show.
Well,
it's not constitutional.
It's legal,
but not constitutional.
Okay. Well,
it's that.
Go ahead.
Anyhow, so we're going to call up the National Guard and the standing military to maintain order against
the
citizens.
Right.
Could the states then turn and say, no, you're not. We're going to use our other troops, the state, what was it called again?
The State Defense Force?
We're going to use we're going to call up our State Defense Force to stand against the federal, because it says right in the National Guard, and they are controlled by the Pentagon, Department of Defense. We've talked about this. Yeah, you need the governor's signature for a lot of their actions, but in a time of war, I don't think you need.
Are we going to go down this road right now?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Look, we don't believe that is obviously.
That's not what's going on.
That's not what's going on.
But I'm just saying how that
here's the thing.
That brings a new light to the discussion, though. That's a new angle.
It does, but look what happened in the Civil War.
And the new Navy.
Look what happened in the Civil War. General Lee was a West Point graduate.
Yes.
Right? He was a member of the United States Army.
Yes.
And at the outbreak of the Civil War, when the South seceded, he was the son or grandson of Henry Lighthorse Lee, fought in the American Revolution, hero, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he actually maintained his loyalty to his state and fought for the Confederacy.
Right.
Subsequently, there was a ballistic submarine named after him.
Yep.
Because he was a West Point graduate. He was actually a great United States military officer, but he did go with his home state, ceded from the United States, and fought on behalf of the Confederacy. If you had an incident like that, my guess is you would have states that would secede, and people might say, well, that issue was settled with the Civil War. States can't secede. What are you going to do, stop them?
Yeah, how are you going to stop them?
If Texas and Montana and some of the other states said, yeah, you know what, we're just not sending our representatives to Congress anymore, and we're going to secede. What are you? No, you can't. No, you can't, because we already fought one war. How are you going to stop them?
We're going to cut your federal funding. Okay, then what?
Okay. Well, we have all the jobs, so go for it.
Right. That's fine, because we're not going to pay you taxes. We're just going to keep all the taxes that we pay here.
Yeah, and thanks for all the bases. Here's the thing. I think that you would have military commanders and military units that would stay on. Well, I mean, you would have them that go. Yeah, you would have them that go on both sides.
Yeah,
like you did in the Civil War.
Absolutely.
Right, and you would have citizens joining both sides. And same with the defense. I mean, the defense forces. I mean, a state may say, what if they have people in those defense forces who were prior U.S. military whose allegiance still lied with the United States?
Right.
And so I think you would just have a split. Now, I have no idea what that split would be, because there are many people high up in the United States military, I believe it was on McChrystal or whatever, who's one of them, who is a complete liberal, progressive ideologue.
Right.
And I mean, what that point was made in the debate by Dana with in Pierce Morgan,
with our good friend Pierce, and your buddy Van Jones was on it, and Grover Norquist was on it. Yeah,
communist. But and I think that's what you would see. So I don't know about these civilian defense forces. I mean, if they serve the governor, they're not aligned to the U.S. government. I don't know. Interesting.
I'm not saying how it's going to play out. I'm not hoping it plays out, obviously. Honestly, I do not want that to happen.
This is all just speculation. This is all just
total speculation. But
because you've already had talks from certain states about seceding from the Union.
Absolutely.
And if the U.S. is not going to let that happen, I don't think any president would let that happen, regardless of party. I don't think President Obama would say, oh, yeah, Texas, Montana, whatever, go ahead. I don't think George W. Bush would say, go ahead. I don't think any president would allow that to happen.
No. You would hope that they would try to have some sort of reasonable discussion about it. I just think it's amazing, as we've discussed this in the past, and this evolving discussion as to what could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to the Constitution. It goes back to our defense against tyranny and why that's so important. And I know that this is just an open discussion, but we've kind of figured more out that can be done as we've gone on. And it's spread out more because it became, our first argument was the militia and then the citizenry, and now it's the state defense forces could be somehow utilized. It's amazing how much you don't know about a country you think you know a lot about. I thought I knew a ton about our Constitution.
And
the military, all that stuff before I started this show. And the more we do this show and the more I find out, the more amazed I am. It's just, I'll tell you, it is an amazing trip that we take down every week. And good on you, man, for just, once again, just digging up the dirt.
Well, what if state defense force could be used as a way to oppress the citizenry also?
Well, it could be just like anything else. Hey, it could be like the city in Mexico.
And what I don't know about it, I don't know how they are armed. I don't know how they are trained. I don't know. Like I said, I just found this out reading this Supreme Court opinion. We're up against a break.
We are up against a break. We'll follow up on this. Like I said, maybe we can get a leader from them to come on and discuss the whole thing at some point. I think that'd be an interesting show. We'll be back in a few minutes with Sackheads Radio.
Hey folks, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank the men and women of our armed forces, as well as our first responders, law enforcement, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for making this country and our communities a better and safer place. God bless.
Hello, I'm Ashley, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Dr. Larry Arnn on why the Constitution limits government.
James Madison writes in Federalist 51 that men are not angels. Their passions and self-interest often get the better of their reason and sense of justice. So we need government in order to protect our rights against those who would take them away. But for the same reason, Madison writes, government must be limited because people in government have passions and interests too. Many Americans today forget this, supposing that we can do away with constitutional limits on government, supposing that the unelected bureaucrats being put in charge of our health care, for example, will rule as if they are angels. If Madison was correct about human nature, this is foolish and dangerous.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Sarah Marie Brenner. We often talk on the Brenner Brief about the fact that there really needs to be an organization to help people at the local level who are interested in running for things like school boards, city council, and other local offices. Well, I think I finally have the solution for you, at least for you women out there. It's called Politigal Network, POLITIGAL Network.com. Their website's going to be launching mid-August, but they're already on Twitter at PoliticalUSA. I encourage you to follow them and become a member. Their goal is to be the #1 resource for conservative women. So if you love freedom, liberty, the United States of America, and politics, check out PoliticalNetwork.com or Twitter at PoliticalUSA.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hey guys, it's Sean from Sackheads Radio. I want to talk to you a minute about our friends over at HomefrontHugs.com. They're an amazing organization of volunteers who take their time, effort, and money to take care of our troops overseas as they serve our great nation. HomefrontHugs.com. You can donate, write letters to troops, adopt a troop, you name it, you can do it. Help those wonderful folks who protect our freedoms. Go to HomefrontHugs.com. Tell them Sackheads Radio sent you.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the show. That was an interesting first half of things that we didn't even put on our schedule for the night that we got into.
Yeah,
What are you doing over there?
Stuff.
You're like moving keys around, and now you're juggling. Why are you juggling right now?
Why are you not juggling right now?
Oh, so the state that we got to find out more about that, because that's killing me now. And it's 11 o'clock on a Friday night, of course. This is one of those things that I want to call right now and find answers. But
call.
Well, there's nobody's going to answer.
Are you kidding me? It's the state of California.
I know, but what if Hillary's supposed
to spend money like it's going out of style? I'm sure they're open.
What if Hillary's supposed to answer the phone?
She's not going to answer.
Exactly. I don't feel like leaving a voicemail again.
Okay.
Is there a phone number?
I'm sure there is.
I was going to say, if there's a phone number, I'll dial out in the show and we'll leave a message.
We'll check it out this week coming up.
Okay. What else is in the news this week?
How about the B-2s that flew over North Korea and dropped dummy munitions? How awesome was that?
Well, it was in South Korea.
Well, they flew from
the
U.S.
Right.
Flew to Korea.
Right.
I wonder...
To drop dummy munitions. And that really was the end of the story. Oh, no, wait. Kim Jong-un got his...
Gangnam Style.
How do you say panties in Korean? I think it's Sung-sun. And I'm not exaggerating. I looked it up before we went on the air. In a bunch. And once again made threats. He apparently put his rockets on standby, his air defenses on standby. I know this week they also
because
cut...
his air defenses would totally nail him, I'm sure.
I know they also cut a... Hey, you know what?
Do you think those hats that they wear, like, they keep in all of their, like, ideas?
I think...
From going out?
When you go in 2015 and run for president for Sackhead Clinton 2015, I think your entire command staff should have to wear those.
Those hats are... I want one. I just want to tip those guys over and stand them on their heads on those hats.
Well, he's still all upset because they're doing this this joint operation with South Korea. And listen, we've been doing this operations for years. And do you think that he's... this is just ridiculous. He's, I'm going to put my rockets on standby. To do what? Well, we're going to cut off the military hotline between North and South Korea. Okay. We're still in a state of war with South Korea. Okay. Now what? We're going to turn you into a sea of fire. Okay. I'm like to the point where I'm like, dude, hit me or shut up. You know, like just this is absolutely insane. He's a moron, first of all.
Is he's talking himself into a corner.
Well,
I mean, really, because at some point he's either going to have to put up or shut up.
Right.
Because the U.S. is going to, you're going to say, okay, well, here's a couple of B-2s. We're going to fly them over South Korea. And then we're going to land back at home and drink some coffee and just kick back and have fun and watch you just spin up on this.
Dude, you know what?
And then he's going to and then we're going to put our brand new warship over there into the 7th Fleet.
And wave at you.
Yeah, and wave at you. Hi. You can't, shoot a missile. You can't see me.
Right.
You can't shoot this down.
I just want to know politically what his end game is. Is he really going to poke the bear? Because that's just suicide. Yeah, you know what? I know we talked about last week the amount of artillery they have on the border that could hit Seoul, Korea. I read somewhere that they could fire like 100,000 rounds in the first hour of artillery. That could be very damaging for the people of South Korea.
Yes.
I'm not arguing that. Long term, he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell.
Unless he gets backing from the Russians.
As we've talked before, right.
Right. But here's the thing. At what point, do we believe him?
Well, at what point do we have to say, hey, you know what? This is no longer an idle threat. You're really starting to scare us. You know, it's...
I was going to say piss us off, but yeah, scare us.
Well, scare us either for South Korea, Japan. He's got ability to hit Japan.
There were some experts that said, well, he's threatened to shoot at the U.S., the continental United States. Some of the experts out there that I've read have said he does not have the capability, the intercontinental ballistic capability, to shoot the United States.
Some experts say he does.
So I haven't read any that have. So there may
at least Russia.
I haven't, and then that's where I'm going with this. Unless Russia has provided him with something,
right?
The intelligence out there that's been made public, they do not believe North Korea has the ability to make a nuclear weapon so small as to put it on an intercontinental ballistic missile or ballistic missile capable of hitting the United States. However, the Russians do.
Mm-hmm.
And they've already been poking us also.
Yes, we know that.
Which we talked about a couple shows ago. Couple flybys with their Bear bombers and the sub in the Gulf of Mexico. If they've supplied North Korea with anything, then they have the capability.
They absolutely do.
So how much of this rhetoric do we take?
Right.
I mean, it's not only rhetoric. He's made moves. I mean, he's cut the military line. He's made moves that has demonstrated a clear intent
on what he wants to do.
To wage war.
Well, and I also, as I've said before, and I know... And
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not.
Kudos to the Obama administration in sending B-2s over there to send his
a little bit of a message. Hey, you know what? We can do this if we want.
And that, hey, we are standing by South Korea. Here's a couple B-2s. We're going to drop some munitions. Why don't you go ahead and think about what it is you're doing?
March 29th at 11:09 p.m., Clint says kudos to Obama admin. All right. I just wanted to document that.
Absolutely, because when somebody says you never give them credit.
Right. We absolutely can now pull this one time that we did up.
We've given him
I'm
credit
kidding,
before.
for goodness sakes. I'm kidding. Well, you know, and the other thing, too, that I bring up about when we talk about North Korea and their poking of the bear, if you will, is after the Iron Curtain fell and a lot of munitions and a couple of suitcase bombs, if you will, went missing. Did they get their hands on even the technology to be able to duplicate it? And not maybe
it
not
depends
even
how much information. Remember, China got all kinds of information under the Clinton administration, correct? How much has China shared with North Korea? And Kim Jong-il, I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but my perception is just based upon the relations and the way things are going. It seems like they had a better relationship with Kim Jong-il than they've had with Kim Jong-un.
Well, I think they had a trusting relationship with Kim Jong-il. I think at the end of the day, they knew pretty well that he wasn't going to haul off and throw the first punch because he knew it was suicide. The problem I have, as I've said before with this kid, and he is a kid, and I'll say that.
Yeah.
I don't think they know enough about him to be able to gauge him. They haven't been dealing with him for more than a year and a half, 2 years now that the old man's been dead. And now he's doing all this crazy BS. Listen, they don't even know how old he is.
Is he a king? Is this like a monarchy because it passed down? I know it's not a monarchy, it's a dictatorship, but it passes down like same family, right? So does he have to have an heir in order to continue the dynasty? And does he have like a little ring that they take off his finger? And
I don't know. I know he'll be, no matter how he dies, unless North Korea falls as a nation, he will be enshrined in ice or whatever they do and put on public display, as many communist leaders do. So I don't know your question. I would say you could probably argue that it's now a monarchy on some level, but it's just a straight dictatorship, communist dictatorship. Socialism.
But they just keep it in the family.
You know, the thing that Van Jones is really a big fan of, communism.
Right, he loves this.
But either way, I don't think they know enough. So now they have to kind of gauge him, like, hey, you know what, we're going to talk. You know, they want us to stop with our quote-unquote harsh rhetoric in response. They essentially want to know if he's the bad kid that you're going to be able to ignore and he'll just go away, or is he the worst kid that you ignore and then he says, oh, you're ignoring me? Well, I'm going to make you not ignore me. Now, mind you, just after he took office, he did shell the island in the Sea of Japan that is occupied by South Korea. Mm-hmm. And I think 2 ROK soldiers and a couple civilians died in that. There was the torpedoing of a South Korean ship, and this is after that was him bolstering, saying, hey, I'm not afraid of you. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do, and you're not going to be able to push me around. And now we're to this point where he has cut the regular hotline on the DMZ, cut the military hotline. He's made these ridiculous threats over the top. He's putting his missiles on ready, which I don't know if that means Wile E. Coyote sitting there with the match against the fuse. I don't know what that means. I know they have a large battery of short and medium-range missiles. Mm-hmm. I don't know how operational they are. No one does. That's the problem with North Korea. We don't have a lot of intelligence because they're such a closed-off nation. And, yeah, we get satellite imaging and stuff like that, but we don't know what's operational on the ground. So it's hard to really gauge. I mean, he's got older Soviet technology that, if it's well-maintained, is still effective. You know, it may not be GPS satellite guided and put it through the front door, but that's almost even scarier because now instead of just outright targeting military targets, it's just going to go awry. He's also got chemical weapons and bioweapons, which people are ignoring the fact that he could utilize those very easily. So is this something where we just sit here once again, you know, I know, like you said, the Obama administration authorized during that, and they had to have authorized it. It's the only way we'd fly over their airspace, the flyover in order to be involved in the South Korea military exercise. But at some point, we have to get beyond sanctions, even if that means that we send a representative over and says, hey, we're going to have a sit-down with you, North Korea. Peaceful sit-down, one-on-one, and I'm going to tell you this straight to your face where nobody else is listening. You push us around one more time, and we're going to push back. And if you touch any of our allies, we're going to push back. You aren't who you think you are, so knock it off. At some point, you have to draw the line in the sand.
Well, here's the interesting thing. The North Korean media released a photograph of Kim Jong-un, and
I love his photo ops. He's just amazing with them.
He had his, some other military people huddled around this map, and the title of the map was U.S. Mainland Strike Plan.
Yeah.
So you have the rhetoric, you have the moving of troops, the cutting of the hotline, and now he's looking at a map that shows different strike routes for cities on both American coast, and the title U.S. Mainland Strike Plan.
And they've also had, they had a YouTube video a couple months ago that showed a city that appeared to be New York burning in flames while the guy is asleep. They released another.
At what point do you believe
propaganda video last week, I believe?
At what point do you believe somebody? At what point do you take somebody at their word?
When you can finally decide whether or not it's tomfoolery.
Let's simplify this.
Okay.
This is, let's say that this is a 19-year-old kid, and he says that he has access to weapons, and he says that he is going to go to a school or whatever and turn it into a sea of fire, innocent people.
Right.
And then he has like blueprints of the school
or system and
whatever it
or
is.
he has a drawn up plan.
And on this map of the facility.
And he's going on YouTube and telling people it.
Yeah.
And doing graphic images
right.
of people dying.
And then
the
on the paper it says, my batshit crazy idea or something like
right.
that. At what point that would be actionable, correct?
Yeah, but I almost, I start to wonder if it's almost like.
I'm taking
do you remember,
in very simple terms.
I understand that. Do you remember? You watched the Three Stooges growing up, did you not?
Of course.
They had an episode where they were mocking Nazi Germany. And they were all in charge, and there was like a map of how they would take over the world, if you were.
Okay.
Well, I wonder if it's like that. Like they're not the Three Stooges standing in front of a map of a plan that'll never work, trying to make it look good. He knows he can't pull off shirtless Putin. He can't pull off shirtless Putin. He knows he can't pull off shirtless Putin. That's a power play in the modeling industry.
Can we afford to take that chance?
No.
Okay.
No, absolutely.
So why are we? Okay, when you were a kid on the playground.
Yeah, last week.
Somebody said, "I'm going to kick your." Did you wait for them to finish that sentence?
No.
No. Of course, it was also permissible back then. We didn't have a generation of sissies. We also didn't have a lot of mass killings. But anyways, I digress. What? It's clearly the tag in the playing cops and robbers and stuff.
I understand that. No, I played a lot of games like that.
I mean, I think that, and look, I'm not saying we need to go to war with North Korea right now, but I'm tired of reading about these analysts that believe that there's no immediate threat and that, there's no immediate threat because South Koreans are still allowed to cross the border into North Korea to work at a factory.
Yeah.
And if that and they may have cut all the communications and done all this posturing, and they're looking at strike plans and threaten to turn us into a sea of fire. But man, those South Koreans can still cross the border and work at a factory, so I think we're okay. What?
Yeah.
Wait, what? That's like saying no. The guy's not going to go shoot up the movie theater or the school because he's reading Calvin and Hobbes, and that's a real happy thing. I don't get it.
Right.
They're expert
I do
analysts.
love Calvin and Hobbes.
I don't care. I love Calvin and Hobbes also.
So let's not shine a bad light on Calvin and Hobbes.
Watterson's a genius.
Watterson was a genius.
Yeah, take the call.
All right, so we have a call on hold right now, and
I wonder if it's our person that was angry at us because we talked about North Korea last time.
No, it's somebody that wanted to chime in on North Korea. Hey, you're on the Sackheads radio show. What's your question? What's your comment?
Well, I actually have a theory. I mean, just a few weeks ago, we had Dennis Rodman over there, right? It was all shits and giggles, having fun, right?
Yeah.
Well, hold on. This is my theory now.
No, I love that term, S&Gs. I think that's one of the best terms on the face of the planet. So you just got me to giggle with that.
Okay. Well, then he leaves, and then he says, Kim Jong-un, whatever his name is, I'll tell President Obama to call me.
Right.
What did Dennis Rodman do? Who did he knock up? Did he steal the golden egg out of the bathroom? He did something over there to piss this guy off. Did he knock up his wife or what? Dennis Rodman, what did you do?
So you're thinking that all of this has nothing to do with the military exercise. It could be Dennis Rodman's doing because he somehow insulted the dictator of North Korea.
I think after Dennis Rodman left, okay, and again, this is a theory, somebody like maybe this guy's wife is all knocked up now. Or the golden egg that's been passed down through this family or whatever thing, he pocketed it and stuck it down his pants and left.
Is it possible that Dennis Rodman would not engage in sexual relations with him?
Ooh.
Is that a possible theory? Almost like a lover's spat, so now he's angry at the whole country.
Well, no, because when he came back, he like I said, everything was all shits and giggles. Everybody was happy. He's over there, sitting with him and playing basketball. I think this guy found out later after he left the country that Dennis Rodman was talking.
I think we should give Dennis Rodman back to him.
I think we should say, if that's what'll end all this, then maybe we need to extradite Dennis Rodman on some sort of theft charge from North Korea. Maybe he did like a Weekend at Bernie's thing with Kim Jong-il's body, and he got caught with pictures or something like that, where he's like riding him around in the car, and this is the dead father with the hand going up and down. Your theory may not be far off. Maybe Dennis Rodman is going to lead us into this war with North Korea because of his actions.
Whatever he did. I mean, someone needs to directly ask him.
We're going to try. We'll try to get Dennis on the radio just to see if he'll answer the questions. Caller, what was your name?
My name's Bill.
Bill, where are you calling from?
Rural Pennsylvania.
Rural Pennsylvania. Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you for the call,
that was great insight. I never even thought about that. Bill, thank you, sir. That was
all right.
So now we have it could be the military exercise. It could be them trying to bolster it. It could be the sanctions.
Could be. Because
of the nuclear test. Or the Dennis Rodman theory. Is Rodman the smoking gun?
Interesting.
You never know with him. Right? I mean, look at how he showed dressed up to certain things. He was married to Madonna for a while, wasn't he, or something like that? I don't know enough about.
I don't pay any attention to him.
I don't
know.
But he's got a really valid point. Rodman went over there and all hell broke loose afterwards. Could Rodman be an international incident? You know what I mean?
Was it really a nuclear test, or did Rodman flip a switch?
Yeah,
or something when he was over there.
Was he in the room that says
stadium lights?
Was he in the room with the button that said "Do not touch"? And he's like, "Yeah, dude, I'm Dennis Rodman. I'm touching it." Boom. North Korea just tested a. No, we didn't. We didn't test anything. We're sending Dennis Rodman back now, and that. Hey, anything's possible. Thank you from Bill in Pennsylvania for your call. If you want to jump in, 347-205-9399. I'm glad Bill called because that made that a fun segment. We were getting way too serious. Plus, he said my favorite term in the world. I love S&Gs. I don't know what about that statement gets me going, but it does. To get back to the point that we were discussing, despite what caused it, and Rodman theory may be it, what do we do now? Do we wait for them to take the punch? Do we sit and I'm sure we're watching them with satellites. I'm sure we're watching their mobilization. I'm sure any eyes that we can get on the ground are on there. I know the administration is at least watching this. I can't imagine they're not. I mean, look what happened with 9/11 this year, in Benghazi, that is. So they can't get caught again. So we have to be doing some sort of intel. But again, it's a country that we don't know a lot about. They have some more modern aircraft. They can't stand toe-to-toe with us. There's no way.
Right.
They do have excessive amount of submarines. I think they have a decent amount of former Russian submarines. They have some newer reverse engineered technology, I think, of some Russian weapons.
Okay.
I think Iran's been giving them some materials as well. So do you wait? If you're President Obama, do you wait?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I am asking you.
Here's what I would do. You know, and just hear me out on this before you interrupt. You know that the USS Constitution is still an active United States warship.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
It is berthed in Boston Harbor.
Absolutely. I've been on it. Not enough, but a ton of times.
It's still in service. It's still crewed by a naval crew. I would sail that over to North Korea.
One cannon shot across the bow?
What? Why are you laughing?
I'm asking. One cannon shot across the bow.
Listen, I would escort it in up close to within range of the coast. I would, first of all, you have to take out the coastal defense. I would fire a couple cannon shots just onto the coast, and then I'd sail it back. Talk about sending a statement, right?
You have used that theory, and I think it hasn't been utilized enough by this government. I think we could solve a lot more issues with that. And
it's almost
that's the ultimate middle finger.
It is, right?
That is the ultimate middle
You're not
finger.
even worthy of a current warship. We're going to send this 1792 ship, whenever it was commissioned, right?
And then
over there, and we're just going to fire a cannon.
If it goes to all-out war, we use the giant air balloons that Japan was trying to use to drop our missiles.
Right.
We're not going to waste money with planes. We're going to use helium and old TNT bombs. No, because, people would freak out that we would be indiscriminate with our bombing.
Okay, how about this? How about the Air Force currently has 85 B-52 bombers in inventory?
Yes.
With 9 in reserve?
Yes.
Why not just fly all of them?
At once.
Just
low.
Over the Korean Peninsula.
Really low.
You like it?
What if you could get them to fly in a formation of a middle finger?
Oh, you could do that.
I'm sure they can. We have the best pilots in the world.
You could do that.
I'm just saying, find out what his response is going to be. What if we just fly over and drop Rodman from a parachute in his wedding gown?
You're just getting silly now.
Do you remember? Did I just jump the shark?
You did. Do you remember when you wouldn't remember this, but when the Japanese surrendered on the USS Missouri?
Yes.
The U.S. flew like a ton of warplanes over. Do you remember that?
Yes.
As kind of like we kicked your ass and we still have all this too.
Right.
Why don't we just do that preemptively to North Korea? Just fly everything we have over there, right? All the B-52s, B-1 Spirit, B-2s,
Piper training cubs,
all the fighters. Just fly everything over that we have, and then
Cessnas, anything you can think of.
And then
a Piper Cub.
Yeah.
Paper airplanes. Air hogs, the little remote control air hogs.
And then just wait for the call.
And it'll never come, and I'll tell you why.
Because after he deposit fecal matter in his shorts.
Right. He wouldn't know what to do with himself. And now that he severed the hotline, who's he going to call?
It's kind of like. Do you remember when Reagan went in and just sent a couple A6s to send a message to Gaddafi? We didn't hear another word from a peep.
It was weird.
Ever.
For the longest time.
He became like the nicest guy.
Until all of a sudden he showed up
at
the UN for a 15-minute speech that took 2 hours, and that was after he took up half of Central Park with his tents, some golf course that he had to use, so he wouldn't do Central Park.
And didn't talk about anything.
I may have said this before. Did I ever tell you my ultimate reality show before he died?
No.
My ultimate reality show was Putin and Gaddafi living in San Francisco in an apartment with no money, both of them working at a Gap. Follow them for a year.
What'd you call it, Pudafi?
I think I called it something like Vlad and Momar take on San Francisco or something. It doesn't matter what I called it. Just picture that for a one-room apartment, and they're living together, and they're like fighting almost like the real world, and they have to go work at the Gap with all like these stuffy people, and Gaddafi has that big hat that he wore and that super gown that he'd wear all the time.
And working retail too, so people just
dumping all over him. Think about the comedy in that, and then they had to go and kill him.
Great until Putin pulled a little 9mm out of his jaw and like took somebody and they're like finding bodies in the dressing room. Like, where are all these people coming from? That's the only problem with that.
I just look at it like Coming to America, where you flash forward 6 months and he has the giant apartment with the jacuzzi in it, and he was like, "Yeah, I had to make a call." When we come back, the U.S. Army said no to Purple Hearts for the military members who survived the Fort Hood shooting or perished in the Fort Hood shooting. We will discuss that here in a minute on Sackheads Radio.
Hello, I'm Lori, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Dr. Larry Arnn on how the founders viewed God as the source of our equality and legal rights.
America's founders knew, obviously, that human beings are not equal in terms of strength or beauty, or in terms of intelligence, industry, or talents. They understood that because of such differences in talents and things like that, some people would be wealthier than others. But human beings are equal, the founders believe, in their possession of natural rights, such as the rights to life, liberty, and property. Today, many Americans reject this equality of rights in order to pursue equality of condition through redistribution, or spreading the wealth around, to use a famous formulation. This is destructive of liberty as the founders understood it.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hey guys, it's Sean from Sackheads Radio. I know I've said it before. Check out our friends at conservativeoutcry.net, but I really mean it. If you want interesting and exciting political commentary and analysis, that is the place to get it. Different, always spot on, always truthful, never pulling a punch. conservativeoutcry.net. Tell Rooster to get Bulldog back on and that Sackheads Radio sent you. And also, coming soon, the Sackheads Radio Forum on conservativeoutcry.net.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
Hi, this is Sarah Marie Brenner. You know, we often talk on the Brenner Brief about the fact that there really needs to be an organization to help people at the local level who are interested in running for things like school boards, city council, and other local offices. Well, I think I finally have the solution for you, at least for you women out there. It's called Politigal Network, POLITIGAL Network.com. Their website's going to be launching mid-August, but they're already on Twitter at PolitigalUSA. I encourage you to follow them and become a member. Their goal is to be the #1 resource for conservative women. So if you love freedom, liberty, the United States of America, and politics, check out PolitigalNetwork.com or Twitter at PolitigalUSA.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
So you just had a tremendous idea. And I did. To share it. Sean thought that we should use the flyover technique with everything we have to solve all of our country's problems. And the example that you cited was, let's fly it over the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yeah.
Just right along the border, everything we have. I thought it was a good idea. Just the visual I got.
Well, and like I said, Cuba. Hey, Cuba, we want to go vacation again. No, we don't like you. Whoa. All right, well, maybe you can have a beach or two. You know, it's international relations at its finest. And I don't know why I don't work for the government, because I could solve a lot of problems.
Look, let's switch gears here and talk about something that absolutely pissed me off this week.
Okay.
And that is the denial of Purple Heart medals to our men and women in uniform who were killed by Fort Hood shooter.
Right. Nidal Hassan.
The alleged shooter.
The alleged shooter.
Yeah.
Well,
okay, first of all, let's go over what was their reasoning. This statement came out earlier today, Friday.
Right, and this is the Army said that they didn't want to do it because they did not want to jade his trial and have unfair treatment, because that would give the assumption that this was an act of terror.
Okay, now, to be clear, act of terror is something, if you're wounded or killed in an act of terror and you are in the United States military, you are eligible for a Purple Heart. That was added in
I believe it was 1973.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So in 9/11, there were military people who were injured or killed on 9/11, am I correct?
Yes.
And they were, in fact, awarded.
Yeah, there was a lieutenant colonel at the Pentagon. I forget her name, but she and a couple others were who were injured trying to save lives were awarded Purple Hearts.
Because it was an act of terror.
Because it was an act of terror.
From the 1973 enactment.
Yes.
So, the Fort Hood shooter, by many accounts, he was in contact with Anwar
al-Awlaki. Yes.
Okay. He specifically targeted military personnel. Correct. I believe there were some accounts where he would look and like under a table or whatever and would see civilians, and he would not fire on them. He would wait until he saw active duty or military members in uniform, and that's who he was specifically targeting. Correct.
Right. And he even in one of his emails to Anwar al-Awlaki, he specified, is it okay to shoot civilians who are non-military combatants, essentially?
Okay. And he also said to him he would see him in the afterlife.
He would see him in the afterlife. Right. During the attack, he was sitting at an empty table. He bowed his head for several seconds, stood up and shouted, as witnesses said, Allahu Akbar,
okay.
Which is a common war cry, if you will, for jihadists.
So it was, by all accounts, it should be considered an act of terror.
Yes.
Which means that our servicemen and women who gave their lives or were injured in the service of our country at Fort Hood seems like it would meet the definition and the parameters to be able to receive a Purple Heart. Or for those who were deceased, their families should be able to receive that Purple Heart. But here you have, and I don't know who made this decision, but the Army is withholding Purple Heart medals because they don't want to taint a trial. They're not calling it an act of terror, so they don't want to taint the trial of the shooter.
Yeah. So
that's ridiculous. So you're going to withhold medals that these military men and women gave their lives or were injured in the service of their country during what, by the account, certainly sounds like a terrorist act. I would classify it as a terrorist act.
Right.
And you're going to withhold a medal from them for political reasons?
And we've had a couple
And it's an act of war. Why is he even getting a criminal trial?
And it's the same reason why they're bringing terrorists that they've caught or trying to at one time to New York for trial. I remember there was a thing, I want to say it was in Alabama a couple of years ago, where there was a jihadist that attacked a military recruiting center. Again, that was not classified as terrorism. Many people speculate this administration does not want to classify things as terrorism, so it can't be, before the last election, it couldn't be used against them as acts of terror that occurred while he was in charge. I'm not denying or confirming that. I'm just saying that's one of the allegations that I've heard in the past. The simple fact of the matter is, you look down the line of all of the things that occurred with Nidal Hassan, his contacts with Anwar al-Awlaki, to the point that it got the FBI's and I think Homeland Security or DSS, somebody started watching him. He had numerous co-workers who said after the fact that, they were concerned about him because of his actions and the things that he was saying. And he was discussing how Muslims should not be fighting on behalf of the Americans against other Muslims. He had a whole setup going into it. He knew what he was going to do. He had a plan. He was radicalized. Many people had said that they believed he became radicalized. It was not sure exactly at what point, but there were co-workers that said they could see the transformation. So you start lining up all of these things as time goes on, And he planned it out. He planned ahead of time. He did research. This, in my opinion, was an act of terror. There are many other people who are quote-unquote specialists in this, including people that worked at the Bin Laden Research Center, I believe it's called. It was a federal think tank on trying to catch these Bin Laden when he was alive, and there was a couple other ones. Even, what's his name there, the Democrat, Republican / independent guy, Joe Lieberman from Connecticut, he came out right away and said, hey, you know what, this is terrorism. I don't know what anyone's talking about. So I cannot believe that they coined this workplace violence, but they did. And now these soldiers who are either deceased or injured, you had one of the captains, I believe it was, he was a private first class, who rushed at him while he was shooting actively and died in the process of trying to stop him, as well as there was a civilian, a medical assistant who was there as well doing the same thing. What is it then? If this isn't terror, how can this just be considered a workplace shooting?
Well, here's what the Army said. The Army said, and this is a quote according to a Reuters story written by Jim Forsyth on March 29th. He says that the Army wrote this, quote unquote, U.S. military personnel are organized, trained, and equipped to combat foreign, not domestic, forces or threats. To expand the Purple Heart Award criteria to include domestic criminal acts or domestic terror attacks would be a dramatic departure from the traditional Purple Heart Criteria Award. Now, there are a couple things in here that make no sense. First of all, trained and equipped to combat foreign, not domestic forces or threats. Hassan, the alleged shooter, was in contact with Anwar al-Awlaki, right?
Yeah,
who is a foreign terrorist. Correct?
No, he was an American. Yeah,
he was a U.S. citizen tied to
Al-Qaeda.
Which is a
terrorist organization.
Foreign,
yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So Hassan allegedly was tied to this foreign, even though he was a U.S. citizen, he was tied to this foreign terror group through Anwar al-Awlaki, right?
Yes.
His actions at the shooting, his alleged actions at the shooting, all point to the fact that he was acting on behalf of this terror organization, or as a result of this, his jihadist beliefs tied to this terror organization makes it an act of terror. So I don't understand this doublespeak, or what the Army here is trying to say, that this is a domestic criminal act or a domestic terror attack. Because the alleged shooter was a U.S. citizen, it somehow makes it domestic? No, he was tied to a foreign terror organization, I believe, through Anwar al-Awlaki. Now, if, let's say, the Civil War, did Union soldiers receive Purple Hearts? If there was, we talked about this earlier, if there was, God forbid, another civil war in this country, would United States Army troops be issued Purple Hearts?
Yes.
Or not? Because it's an insurrection, right? It's a domestic threat.
Right, but what if they
correct?
What if they
according to this letter right here issued by the Army, according to what I just said, correct? They're
right.
Organized, trained, and equipped to combat foreign, not domestic forces or threats. So if it's an insurrection and they don't recognize the states as being formally seceding from the Union, then it's an insurrection, a domestic threat, which means that those military personnel killed in such an insurrection would not be eligible for a Purple Heart?
That would be, I would say, according to that, no.
According to this letter that the Army wrote,
no.
Right? That's a bunch of crap.
Absolutely.
And it's completely unfair to the 13 victims who died and 32 wounded or whatever it was. Completely unfair to them and their families.
It goes as it has been in the past.
It's disgusting.
And this whole thing, it comes down to political correctness, in my opinion. They're so afraid of having the bad story of, hey, you know what, this guy is a terrorist because of what he did. Oh, my God, we talked to somebody who volunteered his life to the military, which he used to just get his schooling out of the way, and he's an American. We can't call him a terrorist. Well, a couple days before the shooting, he was handing out copies of the Quran. He was giving away his furniture at his home, saying that he was going to be deployed. But he also handed out phone numbers or business cards that had a phone number, had the words behavioral, mental health, life skills, Nadal Hassan, MD, MPH / SOASWT, psychiatrist. A lot of people who do investigations on terrorism and stuff like that, SOA is commonly used on jihadist websites as an acronym for either soldier or servant of Allah. And the SWT is commonly used by Muslims to mean, I'm going to mispronounce this, but Sabahanu wa Ta'ala, which is glory to God. And it said nothing about his military rank. It said nothing about anything like that. So, as I said before, you start looking into his past, his history, his planning, all that stuff. How can you say it's anything but terror? How can you sit here and say this was just workplace violence? So workplace violence is the disgruntled guy that goes into a business and shoots his boss. He was targeting U.S. soldiers who were about to be deployed or just coming home from. This specific group was about to be deployed overseas. I believe some of them were going to Iraq. Some of them were going to Afghanistan at the time. He has come out numerous times and said that he doesn't believe that we, the United States, should be at war with any sort of Muslims. He made that over and over again. He's justified suicide bombings in some of his lectures. There was a quote I saw that he said that people against or non-true believers will be decapitated, have hot oil poured down their throat, all this. So here's this guy who's done all this stuff, and they're still going to come out and say, oh, no, this is just a workplace violence. And then the Army is going to have the audacity to come out and say, ooh, yeah, you know how they should get Purple Hearts because it was an act of terrorism? Well, due to a quote-unquote fair or unfair trial, we can't allow that to happen. We can't allow people to be jaded, because if we give these people who are heroes a Purple Heart, then that could jade people's opinions.
And that's the thing, and there's no provision for that,
right,
the requirements for Purple Heart. However, what it says, here's the criteria for Purple Heart, quote, after 28 March 1973, as the result of an international terrorist attack against the United States, or a foreign nation friendly to the United States. So again, the alleged shooter is, I even hate saying his name, the alleged shooter was a United States citizen tied through Anwar al-Awlaki, right, to an international terrorist group, Al-Qaeda, I believe, right? That would be the tie. Recognized as such an attack by the Secretary of Army. And here's the thing, if the Secretary of the Army is not acknowledging the Fort Hood shooting as a terrorist attack, now they don't have to issue that. But the reason they gave was they want him to have a fair trial. I don't know that that's a provision in here to deny a Purple Heart, but if the Secretary of the Army would have said, yeah, you know what, this isn't a terrorist attack, therefore it doesn't fall under the articles that require require us to give a Purple Heart. Now the Secretary of the Army has to defend why that's not a terrorist attack, and he probably did so because President Obama is not going to call this a terrorist attack.
Right,
it's a workplace violence issue, right?
It's just easier to do that.
So the Secretary of the Army is not going to. So that's why they're not issuing the Purple Heart. It's politics, and it's a bunch of
BS.
This makes me so angry. It's you know what, Secretary of the Army, how about you have some courage and you do the right thing and you classify this exactly what it was?
Well, one of our listeners in the chat room, Beer Hunter is his name, which I think is an excellent name, and but he said, you know, by the logic, if it was, and I know it was passed in 1973, but those attacked in Pearl Harbor would not have been given a Purple Heart under the logic because war had not been declared yet, and also the Aleutian Islands campaign.
Well, here's the thing. Specifically in the Purple Heart addresses Pearl Harbor specifically because of that.
Right.
It actually says the section applies to members of the armed forces who are killed or wounded on or after 7 December 1941. In the case of a member killed or wounded as described above, on or after 7 December 1941 and before 30 November 1993, Secretary of the Army will award the Purple Heart under provisions, blah, blah, blah. So it's a good point. However, it is specifically addressed in here that on or after 7 December 1941 when the Japanese attacked.
Well, I understand that. And it's just sickening to me.
But then why are you going to award it to people from 9/11?
Right.
Right? Same type of attack.
Yeah, it's really, they were using the airplanes as missiles.
Whether it's a U.S. citizen, wasn't Anwar al-Awlaki targeted by our government?
A drone?
Wasn't he?
Which is really funny.
Which is weird, right? Because he could target him as a terrorist, but if somebody's in coercion with him and then does a shooting...
And he was an American.
And he was... Weird. Just...
How do those two paths don't cross?
Don't think about it.
Speaking of drones, and Beer Hunter brought up another great point. We have a good chat room tonight. These folks that died at Fort Hood aren't getting Purple Hearts, but there are drone pilots who do.
How does a drone pilot get a Purple Heart?
I don't know. I know that happened, though, because I read about something about it last week.
What do you do, fall out of your chair?
I don't know, and I'm not downplaying what they do.
No, I'm not either, but I don't understand how a drone pilot gets a Purple
Maybe
Heart.
PTSD? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not there.
Okay.
But it does bring up a valid point. If they're going to issue them to those individuals, how is this not issuable? Even if the two don't want to meet, if you want to say, if you want to say that we're going to charge him criminally because we think we can blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Okay. But how does that change how those people were victimized?
Now, how about this?
I'm not saying it's right, but...
No, I understand. What if, since we're bringing terror suspects back now to stand trial in the United States in a criminal court, how can we issue any Purple Hearts by people that were killed maybe in Afghanistan or Iraq as a result of somebody that we bring back to trial in the United States for a criminal act, right? It's a criminal act.
Right.
Right? So how can we give Purple Hearts to those? I mean, it's ridiculous. Where's
the line? Where's the line?
The logic doesn't fit, and I understand it doesn't fit this administration's narrative of
logic
of terrorism and all this other stuff. They hate to offend people and use that word, but it makes me so angry.
Well, and it goes back to, for me, you have these families of these soldiers that were about to go overseas. They were already heroes, in my opinion, just for volunteering to go. They weren't drafted. Nobody made them go. They signed up to defend their nation, to serve their nation. They are heroes, in my opinion, just for signing the dotted line. Now they're getting ready to be shipped out. Again, heroes.
Yep.
Here is this jihadist terrorist who plotted, planned, made his ideology completely known. Everyone was aware. The NSA was watching him. The Army was watching him. He had coworkers who they had concerns. He made this statement about people that aren't true believers in regards to Islam. He went and he bought his weapon. He planned ahead. He knew what he wanted to do. He had numerous pockets of extra ammunition. He had a plan. He chose not to attack civilians. He chose to attack service members in uniform. The only civilians he attacked were those who was about to interfere with his action. And you're going to say that he gets a trial and that it's not terrorism. Why the hell has politically correct won in this country to the point that these soldiers can't be honored by our military, our government, in a way that's only fitting? Because at this point, that's all we can offer is a Purple Heart, the family benefits, and our sincere condolences and appreciation for their lives that they were willing to risk for our nation because of some jackass terrorists and political correctness.
How is this story not on the front page?
I don't know.
Of all the major media outlets
I had to dig for it. I had to dig for it.
I know. How is this not on the front page of every major media outlet? How is there not public outcry about this?
And it's the same thing.
The media is completely silent on this.
Once again, it's the same thing with Benghazi. It's the same thing with this. Remember Brian Terry, the border guard that was killed? Remember Fast and the Furious? Where's that gone? Why are people not paying attention? Why is the media not
Why are they not holding this administration accountable?
Because they're in their pockets.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think there are people in the media right now that hope when there's a state-run media, they get hired or chosen or, I don't know, knighted. I don't even know what you would call that at that point.
Knighted.
But I really believe that they're so willing to push this president or the progressive movement's agenda so far that they just want that to be state television, state reporter, state whatever.
And then the rest of us would be re-educated.
Oh, yeah, no, we'd be off the camps quick. It's disgusting to me. We lost outstanding people. There are people that were paralyzed from that incident. It is just, people, like, you have to pay attention. You have to discuss this. This is ridiculous to me. But yet, I can tell you within 2 minutes of waking up in the morning what Lindsay friggin' Lohan did at her last probation/parole hearing. That's all over the friggin' news, but this isn't. And nobody holds media accountable. Nobody holds this administration accountable. It is insane.
That is why I think you have some Americans that are starting to pay attention, and you have media outlets like The Blaze, like Blog Talk, like some of these others that are actually starting to gain traction and gain ground.
Right.
I believe. Why do you think Fox News is so popular?
Right.
You know, some people, they're in the pockets of conservatives. You know what? Fox News has non-conservatives on also. They have people that are in the middle of the road, and they do a pretty good job about presenting both sides of an issue. Granted, they do have some conservative programming. You have Hannity, who's pretty conservative. You have O'Reilly, who's an independent, who's pretty traditional. But they do a pretty good job about presenting both sides of an issue. There's pundits on there like Juan Williams, Bob Beckel, that presents that left side of the argument.
Yeah.
And you don't have that with a lot of the other organizations. I mean, look at what happens when somebody tries to argue with Chris Matthews.
Oh, he just yells over them.
Or Pierce Morgan.
If you go on Chris Matthews' show and you've ever said anything slightly negative towards the president,
turns your microphone down.
His goes up and he yells.
And he yells. Yep.
And that's just what they do. This country needs to have a rude awakening. There's been
Whoa, what do you mean by that?
There's been so many. They need to wake up.
How? What a rude awakening?
Well, unfortunately, we have all these incidents that have occurred that should have been the rude awakening. Hey, you know what? Maybe our government isn't playing fair anymore, or it's not our government. They're doing what they want, and they're not answering to us as they should be. You know, like I said, you had Fast and the Furious.
Do you think that people are starting, that awareness is growing? Or
Not enough.
Or do you think it's plateaued?
Not enough. I think people get...
We had the Tea Party movement, right, for a while.
Yep.
So awareness started to grow, and it's kind of plateaued, maybe declined a little bit. Do you believe that people are starting to pay more attention or less attention, or they just don't?
I think we're going to get into the less attention phase. I think people are going to start tuning out again.
Until what? Until there's a collapse? Until there's an economic collapse?
Either something major happens like that in this country,
okay,
or midway through to this, probably by the end of this year, people start paying attention again because the 2014 midterms will be coming up, and that's...
How much attention are they going to pay?
Enough to decide where they're going to vote.
And that's
most will check in a couple months ahead of time before the election, and they're going to vote party lines anyhow.
And that's my concern.
Yeah, there's just no forethought. There's no forethought. And I'm not saying you have to be inundated. I'm not saying you have to live your life kind of like you and I do. We scour the papers every day and try to find stories like this that are getting buried and thrown down because I think it's important and I think people need to go about it. But you don't have to be that person all the time. You just have to pay attention. Hey, look at a newspaper. Look at a couple different variations of the same story and look for the quote-unquote spin, as O'Reilly would say. Listen to a couple different... I turn on all the networks at one time or another, especially if there's a kind of a big story, to see everyone's different opinions on it when it's an opinion thing. When it's a fact-based, I try to look for the variations of facts and how some news...
Facts don't variate. How they're reporting...
Right, that's what I mean. But I pay attention because...
Did I say variate?
Yeah, you did, and I was just going to let that roll right out.
Huh.
Variate's a good word. I think we should add that in.
Let's do it.
That's going to the Sackhead Dictionary. I'm not here to variate. We can add whatever we mean from it. It don't matter. It's our show. If people don't like it, they can hang up. But you need to pay attention. You need to know what decisions are being made in this country that affect you.
Like not issuing a stinking Purple Heart to heroes.
To heroes. And that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter why they're heroes. They qualify.
I mean, it doesn't matter. They enlisted to serve their country.
They
were gunned down by a Muslim extremist, by a terrorist.
Right.
And
a jihadist.
They gave their lives.
Yeah.
Serving their country.
Yeah.
It's pretty cut and dry.
Right. And what I was saying, it doesn't matter what status they become a hero for. The simple fact of the matter is they qualify for a Purple Heart. They should get a Purple Heart. No questions asked. But we're going to fall into the political correct drudgery that gets thrown around in order to save, as far as I'm concerned, the progressives from saying, ooh, we had a terrorist attack on our watch. Yeah, you did. And your NSA was watching them. Your FBI was watching them. Nobody did anything. Your other military members that were with him that said, hey, something's wrong to the higher-ups, nobody did anything because they were said to have been afraid that if they targeted him, it would have been a racially motivated thing or because he was of the Muslim faith.
Good job. So your cowardice cost lives.
It's weird, though, how...
Good job. Who made that call? And why are they not being prosecuted?
I know. I agree, and there was a bunch of them.
If in the private sector, any supervisor, any boss made a call that caused that caused or ultimately led to the death, major employees, let's even tone it down from death to active shooter event to sexual harassment. If a supervisor or somebody did not take action and whatever, either sexual harassment occurred or you had a major shooting and there were all the signs and nobody took action to stop it, that would be a major lawsuit.
Yes.
For that particular private company. Oh, yeah. And you would have firings, you would have and perhaps even criminal charges, at least civil suits, right? So why is this not the same? Why is this not being investigated? That, hey, we could have stopped this, and somebody
because this hurts an election campaign,
or charges being filed against this individual, some kind of inquiry. I know we're up against a break.
We're up against a break. I just want to leave you with one quick last thought.
No, we're up against a break.
No, in Colorado, they're talking about potential backlash and feedback for the psychologist that the Aurora shooter,
right?
Because they had notification, they didn't do anything about it, and they're talking about possibly going after them for charges. Will these military folks that ignored it or pressed it down be charged?
I don't know, and that's what I'm saying. It's you had some. This was taken up. This was being investigated, but they did nothing. Somebody made the call not to go after this guy because whatever reason. That's who I want.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back in a minute with Sackheads Radio.
Hey, if you care about what's going on in the world, you cannot afford to miss my show. Hi, this is Andrea Kaye, your host of The Andrea Kaye Show. It's not always about the money. Okay, it is always about the money, but it's also about politics, pop culture, and you. The only thing street about this show is the smarts. There's a reason they call me Dynamite in a Dress, and you'll find out why when you listen Tuesday mornings at 10 on Financial News and Talk.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, this is Sackhead Clint. I want to take this opportunity to thank all the wingnut leaders throughout the world to give our men and women of the armed forces a job, as well as all the anarchists, terrorists, and Occupy folks that give our men and women in uniform on the home front, firefighters, law enforcement personnel, and first responders, job security here in the States as well. So thank all you wingnuts out there. This is Sackhead Clint saying have a good day.
Now back to Clint and Sean on Sackheads Radio, radiating elegancy and quality.
I am not eating food as we're coming back from the break. I don't care what anyone says. You're not either.
I'm going to post a picture.
And we're back. I should have choose quick, but I didn't. On the phone right now is our news guru, Vern. Sackhead Vern. Vern, what topics do you have for us on the news?
I'm not drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels, but I'm not, as I'm coming to you to do the news. So there.
Are you sure?
Okay, first of all, let me say, I got a quick question. How can 2 paper bags full of highly functioning brain matter be so darn sexy? You guys are so cute.
It's not
with
easy.
Your jibber and your talky talk all smart and stuff.
Do you know how much work we have to put in to be in this sexy on a regular basis?
Yes.
It's not easy. I have to do my hair. It takes me 10, 12 seconds a day.
Listen, thanks for blowing it. We're actually going to announce this in a couple months. We're actually working on a new cologne called Sackhead Sexy.
She blew us up.
I know. We weren't ready to announce it yet, but since you went there, we kind of have to roll with it.
Right. I'm psyched for Sackhead Sexy.
Yeah, no, it'll be the newest smell. It'll be 1 part paper bag and 2 parts hot air. That's kind of that's what it's going to smell like. What's our news?
Locker room.
Or a locker room. What's our news for the week, Vanessa? What's our choices?
All right. First of all, we've got business and labor. They're close on a deal for the immigration bill.
Okay.
And looks like also Obama's pitch for the public works spending is kind of also in the works there to create some jobs. And we're also touching on the Pope. His foot washing, apparently the final straw for those traditionalists in the Catholic faith. They're not thrilled about that.
Okay.
So first...
Let's, Clint.
What?
Do you want to go with Obama Public Works?
I'm going to take Obama Public Works for 1,000.
Read it.
All right, first things first, trying to show that the economy remains a top priority. President Barack Obama promoted a plan on Friday to create construction and other jobs by attracting private money to help rebuild roads, bridges, and other public works projects. Obama fleshed out the details during a visit to a Miami port that's undergoing $2 billion in upgrades paid for with government and private dollars. The quick trip was designed to show that the economy and unemployment are top priorities for a president who is also waging a high-profile campaign on immigration reform and gun control. So there.
I'll let Clint respond first.
So I want to make sure I can understand this. So he's asking partially for public funds, private funds, and public funds to be used. Does he realize that with the whole Obamacare thing and everything else he's done that there are no private funds anymore that are disposable to give? Is he like asking for donations?
Hey,
what is it?
He's asking for donations.
What is
he's got his little red pail outside of the White House.
Do you remember it went from like a stimulus to then it was quantitative easing, and now it's like donations. What? In order to spur economic growth, we're going to invest it. We're going to deposit more funds into this, and private sector. Since I know we want to raise your taxes because I'm totally into that, and you got to pay for this Obamacare thing, and prices are going up, and we're just digitizing money. Anyways, none of that's relevant. Can you give us some money to help with some of these public works projects?
I like to point out that this is the guy that was asking, in lieu of marriage donations, that you donate to his campaign in the couple's name. So it's not above him to beg for money.
Is he begging, though? I mean, really?
Well, he's kind of demanding. How about this? Instead of using money for a port that's already working, why don't we use that money to, I don't know, open the air traffic control towers they didn't have to close? Or save the money by him not going to Miami on Air Force One at $100,000 an hour or whatever it is to have this stupid speech. If he's so worried about saving our economy, why doesn't he do something smart like, I don't know, unleash... Joe already said that. Unleash Wall Street.
Unleash Wall Street.
Unchain Wall Street. That was it. Unchain Wall Street.
What's he asking for, like $50 billion?
Yeah.
Or something like that, I read?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're going to spend more money to create it. Hey, it doesn't work. You want to create jobs? How's about you cut? Let's do what has worked in the past. How's about you cut taxes? How about you ease some regulations?
Yeah. Why don't you actually do things that have proven to work instead of increase regulations, raise taxes,
increase spending, put more regulations,
and and then unleash the EPA on those people that don't comply. I'm just saying, don't do any of that.
Are you guys done?
You know what? No, hang on.
No, we're not done yet.
Because he's going to release the EPA on us for talking.
Right. Yeah, hot air. Have we gotten our credit?
Tax on your tongue.
If you're that has been done. Anyways, if you can, if you're conservative and you talk longer than 10 minutes, then there's going to be a carbon tax because you exhale so much when you're discussing, and you can barter those with other conservative hosts so that they can like save up time. So we could give our 10 minutes each to like Hannity or Beck or somebody like that, right? It's almost like a cap and trade.
So it's a credit, right?
Cap and trade.
Emissions credit,
right,
yeah.
But like
conservative cap and trade.
But like
conservative cap and trade. That's
Michael
exactly
Moore and Pierce and those
unlimited.
Those knuckleheads, they can have unlimited, because they reduce the carbon footprint other ways because they're progressives, right?
What they're saying, in their opinion, does help the economy
and the environment.
All right, so we fixed that story. I get to pick number two.
So you fixed the economy. Now, what's next?
We fixed the economy.
Right. Well, he just won't listen. I mean, I don't know if you've listened to the show. We say that over and over again. I don't know why government doesn't listen to us because we don't use
saving the world.
The same reason why you don't have lawyers write laws. Because you don't need to do 1,000 pages of something when a page will work.
Yeah, the entire charter of our country on a few pages.
Yeah. On a paper and send it.
All right, for number two, I'm going to take the Pope story. Why are the Catholics upset?
Well, the Catholics are upset because apparently foot washing is just beneath them. So first of all, Pope Francis won over many hearts and minds with his simple style and focus on serving the world's poorest. But apparently he's devastated traditionalist Catholics who adored his predecessor for restoring much of the traditional pomp to the papacy. Francis' decision to disregard church law and wash the feet of two girls, one a Siberian Muslim, the other one an Italian Catholic, during a Holy Thursday ritual has become a bit of the final straw, evidence that Francis has little or no interest in one of the key priorities of Benedict's papacy, which is to revive the pre-Vatican II traditions of the Catholic faith there. So, apparently washing a big no-no.
Let me chime in first. I grew up in an Irish Catholic church or a Catholic church. It is not beneath, I don't believe it's beneath somebody if they feel that that's how they have to connect, to wash the feet of somebody who is considered, quote unquote, less able or something to that effect. I know I'm going to aggravate a lot of Catholics in our audience with this, but I was also a big believer in, I liked Pope John II. I thought that he did a great job of opening the Catholic religion up so it stopped being ostracized as this rich, aristocratic, almost kind of like they did to the founders of this nation, where they turned it into something that it wasn't. And he did a good job of saying, hey, you know what? We have our religion. We love our religion, but we have to understand there are other religions out there, and we're not really the only one, and we need to respect and understand that. And then when he passed away, they got Benedict in, who wanted to tighten things up again. I didn't like Benedict from the beginning. As a pope, I'm sure he was a nice guy outside of what he did in the 30s. What?
What? I thought of something funny. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what, Catholics, lighten up a little bit. All he's doing is reaching out and saying, I'm no better than you, and it's okay for us to actually have a discussion, have a talk. Listen, this is a man who could have lived when he was in Argentina, I believe, in the beautiful Catholic home that they had for him down there and all that, and he chose to live in an apartment. I think he took a bus to work every single day. He did a lot of help for the poor and needy, which, in my opinion, a church has every right in the world to do.
Now, hang on a second. I am surprised that you are sticking up for him, and here's why. You are not a fan of Obama, correct?
Correct.
So when Obama breaks with a lot of laws and traditions, then you're not a fan, correct?
Because the Constitution. No, stop. No.
No.
No, you stop right there. Religion.
We're
mute
talking
him.
about.
Mute
we're
him.
talking about.
No.
Don't do it.
Mute him.
We're talking about Catholic catechism, right?
We've got two conservatives pitted against one another.
What they believe, and so what the foundation of the Catholic Church is, and he's going against that belief system. Why do you not have any problem with that, but you have a problem with the president? You're a hypocrite.
No,
I'm out.
And I'll tell you, get over here and sit down and shut your mouth for a minute and learn. Let me learn you something here, kid. Quite simply, you can choose your religion. I was born and raised in one religion. I could change if that religion. This country is not a choice, in my opinion.
Okay.
I mean,
well, some people, the Catholic
it is
religion is not a choice. They were born
and I
raised
understand
Catholic.
that.
That's their belief system. It's not a choice for them.
My choice as a
the
citizen
system
for my life, liberty, and my pursuit of happiness is a lot different than what the relationship I have with God.
Your time here on earth is more important than your eternal soul. I get what you're saying now. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I'll go with that. But what I'm saying is, and you know what I'm saying, and you're just being
saying that you're a hypocrite.
Go
ahead, please.
You're just being a jerk right now.
I just wanted to throw it out there. Just a question that popped into my head while you were blabbering on and on.
I don't believe that it's the
Why
government.
Why are you shaking that pen at me?
Because I'm going to throw it in a second. I don't believe it's the government.
I just roostered you, by the way.
Yeah, I know you did. I don't believe it's the government's position to come in and provide for the citizens who don't want to do something or unable.
I don't even understand what you're going on.
But I
right
believe
now.
church with charity, reaching out, that's absolutely their right to do so if that's how they want. And the guy is now the head of the church. He believes that it's time to reach out.
Rules be damned. Traditions be damned.
Sure.
Right? So if the president thought that it was time to change and improve and progress on to a new because time has changed, then that's okay.
No,
it's not okay.
Not. No.
Okay, I don't understand.
Because there's a total difference in opinion versus what happens.
No,
what
makes
happens
total
in
sense.
religion.
Okay.
But this is also a religion that was protecting pedophiles when I was growing up, and I didn't agree with that either.
No, but I don't think it's in the rules that they protect pedophiles.
I don't think it's in the rules.
Those are rules, right?
Right.
So that was bad, but this is okay.
No.
Okay, no, I get what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, I'm confused then.
You are confused. No. Don't mute him. I'm just kidding. All I'm saying is he's going to turn it up. He doesn't know what button. Oh, he's touching the soundboard, for goodness sake. Who did that? Clint, sit down. I believe that my country is totally different than my religion. And just like I don't want my country to step into my religion, I don't want the same for religion and country.
But the Pope's not stepping into anybody's religion. He's washing them feet.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is I have the two are separate to me.
Uh-huh.
I have my country, which is where I live.
So it's okay to break rules sometimes as long as it's not the country.
It's okay if you're in faith. That doesn't. It's a faith.
So break rules in faith.
He can change it. He's in charge.
He's the Pope. He's infallible.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Okay.
And as long as.
I have a quick question.
What?
I just have a quick question. Where in the Bible does it ever say anything about a Pope?
Well, I never say Catholics were normal. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, come on.
I'm Catholic,
Come
for God's
on, I grew up
sake.
Catholic. Come on.
Oh, and I just came in to do the news, fellas. That's all.
No, I had great experiences with Catholic Church growing up. But no. But I was a big believer in Pope John and how he reached out across to different people, and I didn't like the fact that Benedict kind of went the other way and said, hey, you know what, we are our own, and it kind of falls along that ideology, you're either with us or against us, is how I felt that he was. And I don't agree with religion that it should be that way. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
Good enough?
Yeah, I just roostered, man. I was just had to throw that out there.
Oh, really? So hold on. I'll give you the rooster intro.
Red, white, and blue. That's a joke, son. The flag waver.
Okay. Now, mumble something incoherent. Talk about when electricity was first invented, and you'll be just like Rooster.
Hey, and how to actually make a musket ball.
Right. From scratch.
From scratch.
Vern, go ahead with the last story, please.
Are you really? All right, and the last story that I had basically was about business and the immigration bill and a deal that is about to hopefully be reached. Looks like big business and major labor unions appeared ready Friday to end a fight over a new low-skilled worker program that had threatened to upend negotiations on a sweeping immigration bill in the Senate, providing a pathway to citizenship for 11 million illegal immigrants already in the U.S. Looks like Senator Chuck Schumer, who had been brokering talks between the AFL-CIO and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, said in a statement that negotiations are very closer than we've ever been, and we are very optimistic. He said there were still a few issues remaining, so we'll see what happens with that.
Clint?
Okay, so the Chamber of Commerce is involved with the EIEIO, CFL, CI,
NFL,
and whatever,
NBA,
Communist Union Organization.
Right.
And they're talking about making lots of criminal aliens in here legally because they perform low-skilled labor, correct?
I didn't like the fact that he put sweeping laws in with immigration, just assuming that that's the only job they can do. That's just screwed up. Why would he do that?
Well,
he's a jerk.
First of all, here's okay. How many unemployed U.S. citizens do we have in this country? Tons. Like literally, I think if you
threw it up, there would be tons.
So we have tons of. Why are we going to put legislation through that is going to give jobs to those who are here illegally, criminal aliens,
as we've discussed before,
and keep U.S. citizens out of our own markets? Because it's look, if I had a family to provide for and I needed a job, and the only thing I could do is get a job in whatever it is, a low-skilled labor position, I would do that in order to provide for my family.
Absolutely.
But I hate this argument of, well, it's low.
Like, I don't know, being a radio show host.
Exactly. These are jobs that Americans don't want. You know what? If Americans don't want those jobs, then maybe they shouldn't get the unemployment check. If you're not willing to go out and do that kind of, is that what our work ethic has become? We have allowed the American work ethic to decline to such a degree that we are going to allow criminals, those who are here illegally in a criminal status, to take jobs because Americans are too stinking lazy, don't have enough pride and self-worth to go out and do those jobs because it's beneath them. Not only that, but if you're enacting legislation so that people can come in and do jobs that Americans don't want, are we saying then that this other group of people is beneath us? How are the citizens of Mexico not outraged by this piece of legislation? How are they not saying, yeah, hey, you know what, wait a second, so you people, this kind of work is too menial for you Americans that you have to pass legislation so that we come do your dirty work?
Right.
How is that okay? And look,
I'm surprised the Canadians aren't outraged, too.
Look, yeah, people from Mexico, they're very, very hard-working individuals.
Yeah.
They are. They have great work ethic. The ones that I know I've come in contact with, they have great work ethic. They have strong family values, and I understand why they're here working and why they're doing these jobs. I get that. I support their work ethic and why they're here. However, there is a process, and the fact that we need to enact legislation saying that a particular class or group of people can come in and do these low-skilled jobs that is essentially beneath Americans because, well, these are jobs that Americans won't do or don't want to do, disgusts me. And how people don't see that as a form of racism, I mean, really, or elitism at the very least, is just beyond me, especially since this comes from a group of people, the Democrats, that are all about civil rights and promote equality and everything else. How can you argue that on one hand, and on the other hand say, you know what, we need special legislation because we have work here. We need to bring a group of people into work because our people won't do this work. It's low skill.
Well,
we don't do this.
You know, and I'll tell you.
Am I wrong at being upset by that?
No, I think
or
you're
seeing
completely
the irony
right.
in this?
I know of a guy who's here illegally from Mexico. Unbelievable craftsman, woodworking. Used to do interior design. Used to do cabinet making, all this other stuff. Tried to start his own business here, but because he didn't have the schooling in America on how to do it, he didn't qualify to get the contractor's license. And like he said, I can do it all. I have no problem doing it all, but because I don't have that piece of paper, because there is yet another restriction from the government saying you must have this. Well, can I take a practical test? No, you have to have this certificate, and then you take the test. Well, I don't have this certificate. Well, sorry, you can't work here.
Was he here legally?
Yeah.
And yeah.
But he learned his trade in Mexico before he came over.
Okay.
So he went to school in Mexico, made enough money down there that he moved his family because he wanted them to have freedom here.
So I want to make sure I understand you right. So your thesis would be, if you're going to enact some kind of legislation, enact some sort of legislation for some kind of crossover. Hey, if you have a particular skill here, you can come over and take a proficiency if it's required a certification or whatnot, and you're here legally. Now you can open your business. Okay, you know what? I would be on board with that type of legislation because that brings people here to this country in a legal fashion
and promotes them to be successful.
Yes, gives them a business here. They're allowed to use their skill here in this country. Maybe get big enough, have employees, pay taxes,
raise a family.
Absolutely.
House in the burbs, the American dream.
Yes.
That's what it's about.
Yep. But to
just throw it and say, hey, you know what? Just because.
Yeah. Here you go. Just because, and because you know what? We want you to do the crap jobs that our people don't want.
And to use the word sweeping.
Yeah.
It's right in there. I
Yeah.
don't care what you say. It's right in there. That's Vern with the news, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you
Vern,
very
thank
much,
you. We'll
Vern.
talk to you next Friday.
Good night.
Excellent job as always.
I want to address one thing real quick. Obama signed an executive order this week he's creating a commission, which is awesome, right? To address some voting issues in the country. Now, do you have a problem with it? Some of the things they're looking at, it was his attorney from the campaign, Bob Bauer, his top lawyer during his campaign, and Ben Ginsburg, who was the attorney for Mitt Romney's campaign, and they're going to be on this commission to look at issues like long lines, voter registration, access, all that kind of stuff.
No, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Here's why I do.
Okay.
It's not the federal government's job to handle election issues. It's not.
No, it's
you know what
the
their job
government.
is? Count the votes. That's your job. Count the electoral votes. Who won? Okay, cool, great, thanks. Elections are handled at the local
On a state level.
So if there is an issue in a particular county, particular district, particular state, it would be up to the state to fix that problem, not for the federal government to create a commission to look at these things. The federal government has no business in local elections. Look, I don't have a problem with looking at better ways to promote voting, but it should not be done at the federal level. It's not a federal issue. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick before we signed off.
Yeah, I guess for me, what if he promoted them to work with states, one from each campaign, saying, hey, we ran a campaign. What can we do each state individually, not federally funded or anything like that? But even said to the states, hey, you know what? You guys,
I would appreciate
do you guys
it
have
if
a voting problem? Or did you have a voting problem? Yes. I have two guys that are willing to work with you on how to make that better.
If you want.
Yep. Absolutely. I think that would be it. So I stand corrected. I would be better off with that.
Okay. I would also, I like that suggestion, as a matter of fact. If you want.
Yeah,
hey, we don't want your help. Okay, great.
Yeah, no, that's on
we'd
you.
love to have you come in. Thank you.
You have that right to.
All right.
Thank you very
Good
much.
show.
It was a great show.
Thank you.
Love being here with you every single week. Thank you, Vern, for bringing us the news the last
Thank you,
half
Sacco.
hour. Thank you to our callers and our listeners. We will see you next Friday night. Please check us out at sackheadsradio.com. We will be posting the Sackhead Laws this week.
Shout out to the Marines in Okinawa, and shout out to all of our men and women in the armed forces that are serving our country overseas and here at home. And
those who did serve.
Yep, our veterans. Thank you also to our men and women who serve here in the United States, our firefighters, EMS personnel, law enforcement officers. Thank you all very much, and thank you very much to our state defense forces for your service as well.
State Defense Force as well. We are going to look into that more. We'll see if we can get a representative on to discuss that. We will see you next Friday night, whatever time we do the show at. What is it? It's 10:30 on this coast, 1:30 on that coast. Check us out at Facebook.com/SackheadsRadio and Twitter @Sackheads. For Sackhead Clint, Sackhead Sacco, this is Sackhead Sean saying see you next week, and
God bless.
God bless. Usually I play the ending music here. There it is.
We will not be held responsible for any...